What's up, everybody? I don't know why I'm laughing. I just feel it's goofy today, I guess. Thanks for joining us. This is the Parents Helping Parents live virtual chapter and webinar. We're glad you're joining us. So we're a group of volunteers, parents, friends, really someone of any age who is dealing, or friends of someone, parents of someone of any age who's dealing with a substance use disorder in some form. We've got a really simple mission, caring parents, offering hope through resources, education, and shared experience. So the virtual chapter is a little bit different than our live in-person meetings. This is streamed live on Facebook or through our private Zoom room. The link for the Zoom webinar, if you prefer to listen there, which is the anonymous way to listen, it's free. You can go on there, put in any name you want so that you can view anonymously, ask questions anonymously. You can find that link on our Facebook page at Parents Helping Parents Inc., or you can find it on our website, parentshelpingparents.info. You can find it in either one of those places, or you can just watch here on Facebook, which is great. We only have one rule. What is said here stays here, so feel free to share, ask questions. We don't point fingers, we don't judge, we just offer support. Many people in the group have had the same experiences, the same questions, and a few people have been able to find some answers. So we really try to listen, share our experiences, share the things that we've learned on our journey and the resources that we've uncovered along the way. We have no professional expertise. We've only walked in the shoes of a parent. Our mission is just to provide information, resources, and support. This meeting or any outreach that Parents Helping Parents offers should never be considered a substitute for professional counseling, legal, financial, or medical services, all of which we recommend you seek if you need it, if that's appropriate for you. And Parents Helping Parents can help put you in touch with professional resources. We've got a great database and a great list. That's just not what we do. So in addition, we love that you're here at the virtual meeting. We love that we can offer this to families who can't be at our live chapters, or to rural communities, or in communities where we don't have live chapters. So thank you for being here. But we also want to let you know that nothing is a better substitute than being in a room full of people that's all trying to offer you support. So if at all possible, to also attend our live meetings, make sure you check us out on Facebook or check us out on the web to find those locations. During the course of the meeting tonight, feel free to ask questions, to share comments in the Zoom room and on the Facebook feed. You can do so in the little comment section in the Facebook feed. Remember that if you're on Facebook, those comments are not private, they're public. So anybody that's viewing, or anybody that goes and watches this video for the next 500 million years, or however long the internet runs, is going to be able to see your comments and see your questions. And so if you want to ask questions privately or anonymously, I want to encourage you to go to the Zoom room where you've got the ability and the freedom to do that. So if you would like to be included on our undisclosed email list, please comment your email address either on Facebook or in Zoom, and we will add you to that list. We don't spam people. All that is going to be is a quarterly newsletter to keep you up to date on all the different events and different things that we're part of. If you'd like to participate as a volunteer, help with meetings, speakers, anything like that, we could use your help. So let us know and we will get in touch with you. So tonight we've got a very special treat. We have got Tyler and Chotsie Barnes, friends, marriage partners, lovers, new parents, recovering addicts and alcoholics, here to share some really good information with you. So Tyler is the pastor here locally in Oklahoma City at Thrive Community Church, and Chotsie is the director of recruitment for Hope is Alive Ministries, and I'm sure they will talk more about those and how those play a role in their program and in their recovery. So I'm throwing it to you guys. Let's get started.
Hey guys. Like he was saying, we're both addicts, and so if Chotsie makes it to July 24th, she'll be sober for the last 5 years, and if I make it to July 28th, then I'll have been sober for the last 6 years. And over the years, we've worked with parents to help them when they have a loved one that's struggling, and we've also had parents that have worked with us and done some really good things that helped us get sober, and also some really bad things that kind of pushed us away. And so we maybe want to just share a little bit of that with you guys, maybe open it up to some questions here in a little bit. But you want to go first, or do you want me to?
Go ahead.
Okay.
We're on a roll.
So I started using in high school. I started drinking and partying, and that led to me eventually going to college and getting away from any prying eyes or my support system. And so I was able to really do what I wanted to do. And so it escalated really quickly to daily drinking. And when that wasn't doing enough, I started smoking the marijuana and selling marijuana, and it just like continued from there till at the very end, I was using heroin and meth together so that I wouldn't overdose because I thought, that was a good idea. So I've kind of traveled any drug, any thing that you could do to change the way that you feel. I've done it. And I've also tried every form of treatment, outpatient, Suboxone therapy, you name it. I tried it. We tried going to a psychiatrist and a psychologist. And so my parents tried literally everything to get me sober. And so we'll kind of maybe start at the beginning and recap a little bit of that. So the first time they tried to help me out, they found out that I was recreationally abusing Oxycontin on a daily basis. So not so recreationally, but I felt it was pretty recreational. But I ended up withdrawing. And when that happened, they said, look, like we know something's going on. We know there's drugs in your car. So we're either going to call the cops and you're going to jail, or you can go to detox. And I was 22 years old. And so I was like, okay, I guess I'm going to detox on New Year's Eve. And it did not work out well for anybody. I was sober for 6 months, and I went to detox. I did the detox thing. I went to treatment. I went to sober living. But the whole time I was absolutely convinced that I was just being a college student, that I didn't have a problem. And it really just kind of taught me like a couple things. Like it taught me, one, that I needed to really hide what I was doing, so I couldn't be honest with people anymore. Mm-hmm. And so I started hiding who I was and what was going on. Because before that, like I'd been really open with my parents about how, what was going on in my life. If I was recreationally smoking pot, then I'd let them know. And they didn't approve of it, but at the same time, like there was that like avenue and connection to be able to share, hey, this is what I'm struggling with. Hey, I have anxiety, those kinds of things. And that really shut that door. The other thing is I just kind of got around a bunch of professional drug addicts. And so that's when I transitioned from just snorting oxy to shooting it up. And so I would not count that as a positive experience as far as my recovery journey goes. At the same time, someone probably needed to step in. I know those 6 months, my parents were able to get some sleep. And those kinds of things. I didn't have to worry about where I was at night and what I was doing. And if I was going to, if they were going to get a phone call in the middle of the night or the next morning and I hear something tragic. And so I know for them, that was kind of the beginning of it all. And then we just continued to try things. So eventually I got arrested. And one of the things that they did that was really good is instead of, coming to the rescue and jumping in the middle of things, they let me sit in jail for 7 days and withdraw and be miserable. And so I got to experience that consequence. And so my parents were really good at like not letting me experience consequences. So they definitely like to jump in and rescue and enable my addiction so that, they kept thinking, oh, like we'll help him this one time. And then, he's going to get his life back on track. It didn't work. And so that was the first time I ever had a consequence. And it was really great. On the flip side of that, like I hated them at the time and I cussed my parents out and they ended up like stop taking my phone calls. Like it was traumatic for them. It was traumatic for me. But at the same time, I ended up going to treatment and I wanted to get clean, but I didn't really want to for me. But I'd attempted suicide a couple of days before. And so I would say that they definitely made the right decision in that regard. And it was a couple months after that, my mom had been going to Al-Anon and going to Celebrate Recovery and doing all these things. And my dad actually went as well. And so they got plugged in and began to get healthy. And so I'm just a firm believer that addiction is a family disease, that it affects the whole family unit. And we were all sick. And that's why my parents had tried to jump in and enable time after time after time and rescue me because they didn't even realize like how crazy some of the stuff that they would do. Like at one point, I had them convinced that since I had this pending felony charge and I had this dog that I needed to take care of that I just couldn't get rid of, that the best solution for me to get housing was for them to buy me like a fifth wheeler to pull in the back of my truck. And then I could just like park it out at Lake Thunderbird and go to OU. And in the back of my mind, I'm like, I'm going to drive this thing to every music festival in the United States. And so, I mean, that's kind of where we were. Kind of them going in to celebrate recovery and everything and going to Al-Anon. They learned one like really crucial thing. They learned that they didn't cause it, that they can't cure it and they can't control it. And so my mom did what she says is like the hardest thing that she ever had to do in her entire life. And that was just completely turn me over to her higher power. And so that's what she did. And she said it was hard, that she cried and cried and prayed and prayed. And that's the time, like when I got to like really experience life, like I no longer felt like this pressure, like that was like trying to literally like push me to get sober. And when that happened, like since the pressure was off, like I got to experience life and experience consequences and experience everything without that shelter. And it wasn't 9 months later that I actually ended up saying, hey, like, I want to go to treatment for me. And when I said, hey, I want to go to treatment for me, that's when everything changed. That's when I got sober. That was July 28th, 2013. And so, that was, I think, the biggest key for me getting sober was the fact that like my family actually got healthy first. Mm-hmm. And so, if you're wondering what you could do for your kid, there's not a whole lot you could actually do like for them. But the best thing that you could do for your whole family and for yourself that will actually impact them would be to begin to get healthy yourself.
I agree.
So, I mean, that's kind of been my experience. Just a couple quick things, like my parents like to solve the situation sometimes with money. And so they say, hey, like if you're doing the right thing, then we'll pay for this and we'll take care of that and we'll cover this bill. And so I just got like really good at like telling them what they wanted to hear. And so, and then taking that money and using it to buy drugs. And so I think that's one thing that my parents did that wasn't healthy. And one of the things they did that was really healthy is they continued to love me and allow me to be like in their home and to spend time with them. Like they never gave up on me when I think a lot of parents probably would have. And so for me, like that was like the one thing, like I always knew that I could call them and that they were available. Kind of emotional. Okay. So those are just kind of my random thoughts on, the way parenting works and the way addiction works and that cycle that affects everyone. So Chotsie's got a little bit different story. Her mom is an alcoholic and
Recovering.
And she's in recovery. And so why don't you tell them a little bit about your thoughts on?
Yeah. So like Tyler said, mine's a little different. At the beginning of my addiction, my mom was also in her addiction. So I grew up in an alcoholic and an addiction home. My dad actually passed away a week after my first birthday from a morphine overdose. And then it just left me and my mom. And so my mom, she actually just celebrated 14 years of sobriety last Wednesday. Woo! So, and I will say before I dive in is that, for me, a big impact in my life and in my recovery is my mom, because she led the way for me and, paved that path for me to follow. Except I did experience in the very beginning what alcoholism looked like. Being so young, I will say the one thing that my mom, that I'm so grateful, is that she was very honest with me, telling me, how my dad died, giving me the details of what happened. And I know a lot of people say they try to, shield their children of secrets and what really happened. And it sounds very harsh to tell your young daughter, hey, your dad died of a drug overdose. And, it's just kind of hard to explain to a young child. But looking back, I have a lot of respect for my mom, and I also have a lot of respect for my dad for the fact that a disease killed him in this addiction and he just could not fight it. So I'm very grateful. And my mom, so my mom's in her addiction from my, growing up years. So I watched her and how she dealt with emotions and what her crutch was. And so that was drinking. So I began drinking at an earlier age. So I started smoking marijuana in the 4th grade. So I started pretty young. And then by 6th grade, I was drinking and going to parties and kind of running with the wild crowd. And at that time, I didn't have a whole lot of consequences because my mom was still in her addiction. However, my mom still, even when she was in her addiction, she was still trying to fight it, and she was going to AA meetings, and she was taking me to Al-Anon. And there was, I don't know if they still have it, but it was called Rainbows back when I was younger. And it just kind of exposes what alcoholism is. And so high school rolled around, continue drinking and driving. And then by my junior year, my mom got sober and things started kicking in. And that was the first time I really experienced my mom being a mom and having consequences. So it really took a long time for me to really understand what I was doing was not right, because I grew up for so long knowing that this is okay, this is how I hide my emotions, and I was never going to be like my mom. She was a completely different drunk, but that quickly changed really fast, and I ended up being exactly like my mom. So so then my mom gets sober and she starts going to AA meetings and really just diving in the middle of the program. And I just watched my mom blossom into this beautiful lady that I've never experienced before. And one thing I can say is that my mom never pressured me, you need to go to AA, you need to go this, you need to go to counseling. The biggest thing that she did was just showed me by her actions. And, Tyler had mentioned this is a family disease. And I totally agree in the fact that it is, and that the moment my mom started getting healthy, I started getting healthy. And so in reverse, if, your son or daughter's out there and you might not have an addiction, if you start getting healthy first, they usually follow behind quickly. If you're getting into Parents Helping Parents, Celebrate Recovery, Al-Anon, things like that, if they see you getting healthy and you're putting down boundaries, then your loved one will follow right behind you. And that's what happened with my mom. Just her getting, setting her own healthy boundaries. I ended up running away from home. And, I didn't have a problem. I had a car, I had my cell phone, I had my bank account, except I was running away from home. And my mom, I didn't think that she would do anything. I didn't think she was going to take my car away, that she was going to turn off my bank account. But I did not have a problem until she gave me a problem. And she ended up getting my car towed, shutting off my bank account, turning off my phone. Those are all luxury items that I had. And she quickly took those away. And then I really had a problem that I had to face. And that was all because of my drinking. And so again, I think not enabling your children, and like what Tyler said, I knew that I could always call my mom. She turned off my cell phone, so I couldn't we say we can't call her mom because we don't have a cell phone, but there's pay phones. My friends have phones, so don't ever worry that if you turn off your kid's cell phone, that they're not going to be able to contact you, because they find a way. And like most drug addicts, if they really want to use, they'll find a way. So I will say that I think that was a big eye opener for me is when my mom took away all those luxury items that I was utilizing during my drinking. And then another thing is that my mom, she had a lot of healthy boundaries with me. And she made it very clear and she never wavered from it. So what she said, you know, coming home drunk, that was a no-go. And I knew that, and she was very clear on that. And she never said, okay, you came home drunk this one night, don't do it again. And I know that's tough love. And, you know, then I like hated it. And I was like, my mom doesn't love me. She doesn't care about me. But that wasn't true at all. Looking back.
It's really the most loving thing she probably could have done.
Yes. I didn't think she loved me at the time, but she loved me more than I can even imagine by doing those things, because she did love me. And towards the end, my mom had set so many boundaries, so many healthy boundaries, and continued to work on herself that I wanted to have that. My mom had created such a beautiful life that I wanted to mimic that. And I was tired of being sick. I was tired of masking my feelings. You know, I woke up and I just felt like death. And I knew without a doubt, I did not even have to think twice, like, I can't talk to my mom about this. So I went and talked to my mom, and I said, look, I'm ready for help. And had my mom not had been so working on herself so much, I might not have been able to open up to her and tell her what was really going on. She always had an open door. I could always come home, but I just could not come home drunk. That was like a big issue. So, you know, she led me to her friends that were in AA, and they basically just loved on me until I could love myself. And that was probably one of the biggest things, is I can't stress enough, is that my mom got healthy first. And she wasn't trying to change me, and she wasn't forcing me to try to go to rehab or, you know, stop drinking, or she, you know, trying to lever me with money. Like, if you don't drink for this weekend, I'll pay your bill, or things like that. Because I would take advantage of it. And she knows that because she got healthy.
So she'd exposed you to the solution.
Mm-hmm.
And you knew what the solution was, but she didn't try to force you to go. You just knew what it was and it was there. And when you were ready to grab it,
Yeah, and I didn't feel like suffocated to the fact that she was pushing this down my throat. It felt very, I was ready and I was willing. And I think that is what made it so much easier for me to ask for help, is because, you know, one of the hardest things that parents have to do is, you know, tough love and let going of their children. You know, bad things happen. Even during that time, but I can say without a doubt, I'm so glad that that's what my mom did.
And you didn't get sober the first time you went to AA, right?
No. So this didn't happen like the first time. It was a one-time thing. It happened a couple times that I would get sober, and then I'd go back out, and then I get sober, and then I go back out. So I mean, it was kind of like a in and out, a couple things, yeah.
Until you were ready.
Until I was ready. That's right. I hadn't lost enough stuff yet. And that was another thing my mom always said was, I would try to defend my drinking. And I would say, well, you know, I haven't been to jail. I haven't been stopped by the cops. I still have a job. I finished college. And then one thing that stuck in my mind is my mom always said, you haven't lost those things yet.
So you didn't experience all the typical consequences that I did.
No. So they call it functional alcoholic. So that was me, but that does not mean
non-functional drug addict.
Yeah. So I was able to go through life without, you know, going to jail and things like that, but that didn't happen yet. So that's just something that I think about, even thinking about going back out and drinking or using, is that one time could ruin my life forever and I might not be here anymore. So that's just something that, you know, I would drink and drive and I'm like, Mom, I never get caught. Like, and I'm sure your kids say it's not a big deal. Everyone's doing it. I don't get in trouble. I'm not like that. I don't drink that much. I can still drink and drive. All of those excuses. And my mom always just said, it hasn't happened yet, Chotsie, yet.
So maybe we should open it up to some questions, or do you want to talk a little bit maybe about what you do at Hope is Alive?
Yes.
What they have as far as family services
talk for a second about Hope is Alive, and then I've got a question.
Yeah, so obviously I'm in recovery, and the greatest part about being in recovery is giving back what you were given. And I work at Hope is Alive Ministries, and I just love everything about Hope is Alive Ministries. Tyler actually graduated from there and worked there too. It is an incredible ministry. It is a men and women's mentoring home, helping struggling addicts, alcoholics. They have a full wraparound service. They have 15 mentoring homes for women and men between Oklahoma City, Tulsa, Wichita, and North Carolina. We also have Finding Hope classes for parents that are struggling as well. And we are faith-based. And the great thing about us is that, you know, when we're drinking, we also have something called process addiction. And so Hope is Alive really dives deep into a process addiction on reasons on why maybe we drink, why maybe we use, or if, you know, there's being a dry drunk or being a dry addict, and we go back to, you know, our process addiction, like sex and love, gambling, eating, shopping, anything like that. So I think that what kind of separates us from other mentoring homes is that we really dive deep into that, as well as working a 12-step recovery program. And we have about 130 residents. So if you have any questions, drop them below, and I would love to answer any questions that you have about Hope is Alive.
If they want to connect with you guys are on Facebook at Hope is Alive, or they can go online to hopeisalive.net. And there's also a Hope line. If you call the Hope line, it rings to her phone. I hear her answering it at all hours of the day and night, and they can get you plugged in with some resources. If your son, loved one, whoever is looking for a resource, if they need detox or sober living or treatment or anything like that, she's your girl. So yeah, that's what she does.
And my number is 473-1506 if I can ever help you with anything.
So while we're waiting for the millions of questions that are fixing to come pouring in from Facebook and Zoom, I've got a couple that I will ask.
Yes.
So my first question is, if you could travel back in time to when you were seriously active in your addiction, what one piece of advice would you tell your family in that time? Yeah.
Oh.
You go first.
What piece of advice would I tell my family? I think if I could go back in time and tell, I'd probably want to be more honest about how I was feeling instead of waiting for so long. I wish that, you know, although my mom was very loving and didn't push things down my throat about, you know, things I needed to do because they eventually came, I do kind of wish that I had maybe that I lost something really significant. She did take away my car. That was pretty significant for me. But gosh, now that I think about it, I feel like she did take away a lot of things. I don't know. Come back to me.
Yeah, I'm not sure what you just said. So for me, it's easy. I would have probably told them that it was like okay to just like turn me over to their higher power, which is God, like sooner, just because they spent so much time and energy and lost so much sleep, and I felt like my parents like aged 5 years in like the course of a year through the process. That if they would have just been willing to just stop trying to fix me, I think it would have caught, I don't know, it would have helped them to not be so quick to, they would have been able to get some sleep. And I think I would have got sober a little bit faster. I probably would have saved them quite a bit of money too, because I know that they just poured everything they could into trying to fix me. And I just don't think that people can fix people most of the time. When loved ones try to fix somebody, that's what makes kind of the situation so sick, is because they think that, that they can be the savior and come in and rescue and change somebody. Talk about insanity, trying to control and change a drug addict. That's crazy pretty quick.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like I knew all the consequences going into this, just because I was already so entwined with alcoholism and addiction.
Well, your mom kind of did most of the stuff kind of the right way, so I don't know if there's any advice for,
Yeah. Maybe not, but
So my next question, which is strange to be asking a pastor and a full-time employee of a ministry organization, maybe you're the perfect people to ask this question
Yes.
to. There are a lot of people who are struggling that aren't people of faith or aren't people of the same faith that you guys are from. So is that a requirement for sobriety and recovery?
absolutely not.
I would say it is a spiritual program. So I would say that it is absolutely necessary
To have a higher power.
to have a higher power.
Yes.
So maybe I should dive into that just a little bit. First of all, I'll tell you this. I wanted absolutely nothing to do with God while I was using. Actually, several of the times that I got sober, in fact, I remember telling God, hey, just leave me alone. I do not want anything to do with you. But I kind of still knew who God was to me.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that really turned me off about getting sober actually was the fact that there was this spiritual component to it. And I went into the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I knew I had a problem. I was willing to admit that, but then, it talked about turning your life over to the care of God as you understood Him. And I really kind of found an issue with that. And it kind of turned me away from any of the avenues, but I tried everything else. I tried, therapy and different kinds of medications. And I tried everything else, and none of the other solutions worked in my life. And so I had to find a spiritual solution. And so I just kind of started really with the basics. And that was that, God could help me if I was willing to let Him. And then I kind of built my faith out from there. And that got us to this point where I ended up being a pastor. And so if you look at, the me from 6 years ago, it would have been the farthest thing actually that anybody thought would ever happen. And so, so I would say that it has to be spiritual. If you're going through, a lot of the situations, it doesn't have to be my higher power. It just has to be a higher power. There's people that, consider doorknobs to be their higher power because or a chair. I think that's a little silly, but I won't go into that. Whatever works for you to get you started. So I just started with something really basic and went from there. So what do you think?
Well, the reason why I say no is because, you don't have to be, you don't have to believe in God to get sober. But I think for me, that kind of comes down the road a little bit later in my journey. Yeah. So, when I first got sober, I believed in God, but He wasn't the first person I was waking up to and thanking and being grateful for. I knew about Him, but I didn't really know how much He loved me, and I had no idea that He was going to play a part in this sobriety life at all. So I had a sponsor tell me that my higher power could be a chair. And because I was just having a really hard time relating to the God sense of it. I didn't really understand it because I didn't really understand who God was. And so later down in my sobriety, you know, I started off with a chair and God, I guess. And then I started going to church and, you know, doing things that my sponsor told me to do. And that's when I was already sober. Then I found God. And that's why I said no, is that it does come later. For me, it did.
Yeah, I think it really just boils down to the fact that you need a power greater than yourself. If we could get ourselves sober, then we would have, but we just couldn't do it.
Everyone would be doing it.
Yeah.
So we're taking open questions. If anybody has them, now is the time. So we will, I tried to fill that gap with a couple questions, so I guess we'll just sit awkwardly.
We can play with your dinosaur.
We can play with dinosaurs, yeah. So we will just wait for some questions to roll in, and if no questions roll in, we'll kind of start wrapping up this meeting. How long have you guys each been sober? I know you said that at the beginning, but I was playing with tech.
So I've been sober almost 6 years. So you don't count it.
No
really.
fronts.
Yeah, no fronts. But July 28th will
No
be
front.
6 years.
Oh, that means she's got to wait till the 28th before he can close 6 years.
Yeah.
I gotcha.
And yours is the 24th
Yes.
Of July.
of July. It'll be
So
5
coming
years
up.
for her. So
Yeah.
we're about to celebrate. We celebrate every year. It's just another day, but I think it's evidence of what God's done in our life and the new life that we have.
I mean, I get that it's just another day, but it's also, I mean, anniversaries are important for a reason because it's a reminder. It's the same reason we celebrate a wedding anniversary, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, it's a reminder of where we've been, transformation that's taken place, healing, whatever that might be. And so I think that it's important that we mark calendars and set goals and
That's
look
very
back
true.
and say,
I will say, you know, every day we lay our head down and we wake up and we're only a day away from being back to where we were. But on that day, it is special because I do remember where I was exactly on that day. A lot of the days, you know, you think about where you were and it's kind of like, oh, I think I was there. For me, I was in Las Vegas.
No place like Vegas to get
Yeah, so I
sober.
got sober in Vegas as well.
hey, if you can get sober in Vegas, there's hope for anybody.
Yeah, there's hope for you.
I mean, I can understand getting sober the day you came back from Vegas.
Yeah, I actually, I went to, it was my mom's birthday party and I ruined her birthday party because I was so drunk and you know, long story short, I ended up waking up and decided that was the day I wanted to get sober. So I went down to my mom's room and kind of just laid it all out there and told her I was ready. And that I was really ready this time because I had told her that several times that I was ready. But I only said that because I knew she wanted to hear that. And I also wanted to, I don't like confrontation. And so I always want sure like my family, you know, thought I was happy and that I was doing the right things. So I'd always tell my mom that I was ready. But this time it was like a serious, like I felt it deep down and I felt like dying. So I knew it was real. I didn't go to rehab or detox.
Now, your boyfriend at the time was in detox or in treatment,
Yes.
and you actually went and visited him and he broke up with you because he said you had a problem.
Yeah.
I just think that's funny. I just thought
Yeah.
just throw that out there.
Yeah. So I was also dating this guy, and which is crazy because I said that he had a problem, and I was, you know, in my own addiction, and I hadn't told him anything that happened in Vegas, and I was driving to go see him at treatment, and I was already kind of playing in my head that maybe I just had a bad night. And when I got there, he actually broke up with me because he said that I had a drinking problem, and that
I think that's just really like cool because it's kind of where we find a lot of loved ones where they say, hey, like why should I have to go to meetings? Why should I have to work on myself? Like they're the one with the problem.
Yes.
And that is very true. Like they are the one that's actively using, but you're actually addicted to like helping and trying to fix and control them. And so that's kind of like a good like picture of that to say, hey, like this is what's going on. We always think that the other person has a problem. So
And that we don't need help.
Yeah, so I've been working with some people in pastoral ministry and had the same thing. We very rarely want to look at ourselves and realize that, hey, like we're the ones that the only people we can change is us. And so if we want to do something, we can work on us. And that's kind of where it begins. Do we have a question?
2 questions.
Ooh, I love questions.
Share your thoughts for a parent who has an adult child that has relapsed sounds like after several years of sobriety, who's suffering from PTSD, but is resistant to getting help again.
That's a
Figured I'd
great.
start with an easy one.
Yeah.
Yeah. We'll start with an easy one. So first and foremost, like they've had like a lot of sobriety. It sounds like. I don't know what the quality of that sobriety was, and what kind of, if they were just miserable the entire time, or if they were working a program active. But regardless, if they were sober, they know what the solution is, and if they're resistant to wanting to embrace that solution, I would say that they're probably just not ready yet. Not all of us make it back, unfortunately. At the same time, they know what that solution is, and so I would be quick to remind them that, hey, that they can do it. They've done it before. They know what to do. They just have to be willing to take that first step back in. And so that's the hardest part, actually, for a lot of people, is after they've had some sobriety, after they've linked that together, to come back in and start from the very beginning. Our pride and our ego really kind of get in the way of that. If you've hung out with any addicts or alcoholics much, that ego is not our amigo. And so
Like that. I've never heard of that.
yeah, that's one.
But I also think
Should be a hashtag.
continuing to work on your own self, making yourself healthy. And like I said, like with my mom, I watched her bloom into this healthy. She didn't stop getting healthy because I was still in my addiction. And that is what made me follow. So if you just continue, I think, if you're working any kind of recovery program yourself, and still loving on that person and, giving them, I don't think it's bad to go ahead and, have that hard conversation and talk to them and give them resources and say, hey, I've talked to a few people and I love you and I care about you. Here are some, resources, some, therapists, counselors, programs, classes that I have found. And, if you're giving them that, then it's on them to
when
choose
they come
that.
to you for help, when they come to you and say, hey, this is what's going on, like those are the things that you continue to say. You don't throw money at the situation. You don't try to figure out what they're up, I'm sure they, so I'd always come up with like some really cool like scheme on like, hey, like this is what we should try and work. So I would just say, hey, like this is the solution that has worked for you. You need to go back to that solution instead of trying to reinvent the wheel on like how we do this thing. There's a lot of different ways that people get sober, but it all boils down kind of to the same thing repeatedly. There's a program that works. There may be something out there that would work that's specific and unique to your situation, but really it's just going to be all of the same stuff over and over again. So.
And I think personally, I don't feel like recovery is a cookie cutter situation. And so whatever program he might have been working, he or she been working might not have been the program. So, sometimes people take, AA, that works for them. Church works for them. I think there's completely different avenues, and just giving them the resources. That's all you can do is give them resources, and they're going to have to take the next step.
And I will say it's been my experience that people that go back out usually have some issues that they haven't dealt with all the way. And whether it's a process addiction or a secret that they've been holding on to that they haven't been willing to share. And so as far as next steps go, that's a great way to say, hey, like we need to go a little bit deeper. I know there's probably more questions. So
well, that's a great segue into our next question, which is what part does counseling play in the continuation of recovery, and how important is attending meetings to maintain sobriety?
Again, I think for me, I can only speak on my experience. I think meetings and counseling are very important in your role. I know for me, almost 5 years sober, I do see a counselor, and it's good for me to do that because it's a part of what got me sober. And they always say if it's not broken, don't fix it. Is that how it goes?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. So, and it's worked for me, and I wouldn't want to stop doing that and, jeopardize my sobriety. As far as going to meetings, I feel like those are really important because it brings you back to where you were when you came into those doors. You have your long-term sobriety people, you have newbies there, and it remembers when you come into those doors what you were like, and then also you have the old timers that are going to sit there and tell you all these stories, but it reminds you and keeps you in check, I feel like.
Yeah. So, and getting sober, like I went to like 3 or 4 AA meetings a day. And then because I needed it because I was kind of that bad of a junkie, I guess. So, and it just one of those things like over the years, I've been able to scale back, but it's not one of those things that like I can eventually eliminate. For one thing, like we were talking a little bit about how, tomorrow could be the day that I end up getting high. And every July I get a little squirrely. I don't know if you've ever noticed this, but every July it approaches my sobriety birthday for whatever reason. It could be just the fact that it's summer and it seems like everybody should party in the summer, that I really have to kind of get back into those meetings and do some stuff. For me, since it is a spiritual solution, church works well for me. Talking with people, working with people, helping people, giving back, for me works really well. Whatever avenue that is, if you're not plugged into helping people in some way that are in recovery or trying to get help, then it's really easy to kind of forget where you came from, which is what you were talking about.
And just having that community, like going to meetings, you're in a room full of everybody that is exactly like you, and we laugh about the stupidest stuff that sober people wouldn't laugh about. But having that community is what keeps me in the room because I feel safe there. And, I just know that they're there and I don't have to worry about what I say in there because they've gone through it or are going through it. So I think it's very important. As far as counseling, I think that's important. And for me is because sometimes you don't want to tell your deepest, darkest secrets in a room full of a lot of people you don't know. Even though they're dealing with the same thing, sometimes you just feel more comfortable with just telling one person, a therapist. And I think people should continue to do what works for them and not, because if you start scaling back, you're going to end up with no program. And then.
Yeah. I mean, there's just a lot of like unresolved issues that people deal with. And so you can get sober and still have a lot of emotional baggage in your life. And you can stay sober for a while, but those things continue to kind of rear their nasty heads as you go through life. And we pick up more stuff as we go on. When I got sober, like I wasn't a husband. I didn't have a career. I didn't have a little daughter. And all of those things like are new, like stresses and things that you kind of, as you go through life, that you have to kind of deal with. And when your go-to solution has always been drugs and alcohol, there is like a breaking point that if you like let those things continue to get stuck inside of you, like you will go back to the one thing that you know works.
Yeah.
No matter how bad it is for you.
So to answer your question, yes, keep going.
So one last kind of final call for any other questions that anybody might have before we wrap up. Tick tock. All right. Back to me, I guess. Thanks everybody for joining the live meeting. Thank you, Tyler and Chotsie, for coming in, taking the time away from your sweet, precious new baby girl. Maybe it was a much needed break for you today. Maybe not. I don't know. But thank you guys for being here. Make sure you join us 2 weeks from tonight on the 15th at the same place, the same time, 7 o'clock. Joe Pello from Pello Outreach will be coming in to share with us about boundaries, codependency, and tough love. So thanks everybody for watching. We will catch you next time. I gotta find the end button.
Dun, dun, dun.